All right, thanks, and welcome to our session. Now, today we're going to be talking about how you can leverage automation to drive digital transformation success. I'm Andrew Hayden. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for our Automate products here at Precisely, and I will be walking you through kind of what we see as the challenges in automation today. All right, so right now the automation market is really, really hot, and a lot of people are adopting it. And why is this happening? Well, if we look at kind of the needs and the wants that companies have, especially coming out of the pandemic, we can get a better understanding, I should say, of why automation is really the thing that a lot of people are now looking at to drive their digital transformation efforts. So from a need standpoint, these things kind of haven't changed, but they became much more apparent during the pandemic. One is they need to be more agile. They need to be able to pivot and change and adapt their business quickly. We also continue to want to go faster. I mean, we live in a continuously accelerating marketplace that requires us to go faster. And we want to do those two things while improving the quality and integrity of our most important data. And for us at Precisely, and we believe for most companies, the most important data we're talking about is your master data. In addition to those needs, companies want to be able to optimize their staffs. We've gone through a lot of transition lately, and then obviously going into a time when we could have a softer economy than we want. We've got smaller staffs, and we want to make sure that the staffs we have can do more and be more productive and more efficient. And so that's one of the things we need, and automation is a great way to get there. We want to be able to reach ROI faster. One of the great criticisms of automation traditionally has been that we've implemented it and it's either taking too long to implement or taking too long to show us results. And I'm going to show you a couple of ways that companies have seen fast ROI out of their automation initiatives. And finally, just one of the things we all want to do is realize that digital transformation dream. And the fact we've been working on digital transformation for decades really has kind of brought a lot of this to the fore in terms of our business strategy and our overall business programs. So coming out of the pandemic, how are we accelerating our digital transformation efforts? Because one of the core things about digital transformation is data being that fuel that we're using for business decisions in our businesses today. And one of the core concepts that we're seeing now, especially around digital transformation, is this idea of hyperautomation that Gartner coined a few years ago. And it's really being able to look at automation beyond just being an IT activity. It's how do you choose the right tools and look at all of the various aspects of your IT stack, along with being able to get more people in the organization engaged with automation. But hyperautomation as a market is growing rather quickly, and Gartner estimates that by 2026, we'll be spending over $1 trillion a year on it. And within hyperautomation, the process automation side of it is growing faster than any other at about 12%. Another thing that we saw coming out of the pandemic, when KPMG surveyed CEOs, they found that about 80% of them are accelerating their digital transformation efforts. 2/3 of those same CEOs are willing to spend more money on technology than people. But when you dig into that number, what you discover is they're not looking to replace people with technology. Now we want to find the technologies that are going to make them more efficient and more effective. Automation is a great way to do that. And finally, ASUG, so the America SAP User Group, did some research, and they found that less than half of SAP-run companies, so many of these are the largest companies in the world, are not leveraging automation to its fullest. And one of the core things we've learned at Precisely about automation and efficient and effective automation being implemented in an organization is you have to look at these two things. You have to look at process and data as being interdependent. You can't just do a process improvement initiative without looking at the data that process creates and manages. If you've got a process that generates bad data already and you automate it to be more efficient and more effective, you can generate a lot of bad data quickly. And we look at some of the common challenges that we see from the process and data side of it, especially in product-related companies. A lot of them on the upstream are common. It doesn't matter whether you're making a can of soda pop or you're manufacturing an automobile. You've got a lot of these same challenges. You have materials challenges. You have vendor challenges. You have these complex data objects. I know in SAP, you can have hundreds of data objects associated with a single material. This idea of spreadsheets and manual data processes. 451 Research recently came out with some data that said that well over 60% of companies still do their primary data creation and data management in Excel. And those manual-based data management processes really are inefficient. So that's one of the great challenges. And I'm not going to read through all these, but you get the idea. There's a lot of them that are common to all of our companies, no matter what we do. And when we think about what it takes to get a product to market, and that interdependence becomes even more obvious between the processes and the data. Most products start in product development and they define what it needs to be. And they turn it over to procurement, who goes looking for who are the right vendors that can supply these particular materials. And now that data is intimately linked. And manufacturing operations tries to figure out, can we actually make this product and what does it take to do it? Warehouse needs to know when to expect the materials. How big are they? Do they require special handling? Any kind of other information that has to go with it. Production planning needs to know when it's all going to be there to put it into the schedule. Controlling tries to figure out from a margin analysis standpoint, how much are we going to make or how much is it going to cost? And finance is looking at the cash flow through this entire process. Throughout all of these, that interdependence, that deep connection between the process and the data is absolutely critical. And thinking about it across your organization, it doesn't live in silos, especially with your master data. It works across your entire organization. That process of getting a product to market does many things, and it works across many different parts of your company. So you want to look at automation that's going to work across your entire company in a very similar manner. Now, to accomplish this, one of the things we believe very firmly is you need to look at it from a platform approach. And why is an automation platform so important? In our world, an automation platform or a complete automation platform has these two core components to it. One is data automation and the other is process automation. Data automation is those mass data processes that you often do, which require a lot of manual work. They're often the processes that are centered around Excel. Process automation is really that workflow component of automation that manages things through a process, if you will. And we see it in two flavors precisely. One is Excel workflow, where you're taking that data management or that data automation Excel file and managing it through a complex workflow. A good example of this is things like journal entries in finance. Foreman workflow, on the other hand, is perfect for when you've got complex processes that involve multiple people in multiple parts of your company. So a vendor creation where you not only have procurement involved, but you have finance and you have often a materials team and a master data team and many different teams that you require either to review data or to input data or to make changes to data. And what does a complete automation platform give you? Well, from a hyperautomation context, it delivers a lot of the benefits that hyperautomation is looking for. It gives you that workflow capability so you are able to manage through complex processes. Connectivity with APIs, so you're able to connect multiple systems together because data often lives in many different systems. Self-service, so that different people, maybe outside of your company, can contribute to that data or modify data through, say, a portal where a vendor can change pricing or change shipping information. And data management we talked about. Cloud deployment is becoming more important as we move towards more of a cloud-first stance in many companies. Governance, both process governance and data governance, being able to work through that platform across the entire core end-to-end processes that we're talking about. Low-code development, so citizen developers within the business can actually be the core developers and core owners of automation. Attended and unattended automation. Often we think of automation as being that unattended automation. Something happens in one system and it automatically processes through. But the reality of it is these businesses or these core business processes require humans to be in that loop. And so attended automation enables the automation to drive efficiencies through human in the loop processes. Forms I talked about, and then data quality throughout that entire process being driven by things like integrated data stewardship throughout that process really help you gain the efficiencies that automation promises. Let's look at a couple of customer examples on this. One is a customer trying to figure out where to get started. And if you think about the aspects of trying to figure out where to get started with automation, we recommend identifying, opportunities for quick implementation. You can do this quickly. It's one focused data process. It can have a high impact, but a limited scope. It's measurable. And then, frankly, we always say, don't try and bite off more than you can chew. Don't look at a massive process and go, oh, let's start with that. Start with a single one. Great example of this is Dorman. And Dorman is a supplier to the automotive industry, and they had a fairly simple process. They needed to change a subset of their materials from being designated as manufactured to being designated as kitted. And this was going to update things like bills of materials and routings and sales orders and a few other things. When they looked at doing this through their traditional manual process, they realized that per 100 materials in SAP, it was going to take them about 60 hours to make these changes, and it was going to cost them about $4,500 with all the outside resources they had to do. When they found automation, they realized that they could use their current staff. They could do it in about 5 hours for those same 100 materials, and it was going to cost them a little less than $400. So in the first quarter of implementing this program, they saved almost $125,000. So nearly $500,000 a year, just in simply using automation for this one process. Now, the question for you is, how many of these one processes do you have in your business? One of the other key things about automation is it often requires you to consider process re-engineering. The kinds of things you want to look for is you want to focus on business outcomes. You want to re-engineer for automation, as I mentioned. You want to consider the fact that you're going to drive organizational change. And it usually happens when you're talking about an end-to-end process. So let's look at a company that did this. So this is an energy drinks company, and traditionally they managed their beverages through spreadsheets, an Excel workbook that was owned by a product manager, and then you had multiple worksheets within it, and highly manual process, but it worked for them when they were just a regional provider. Then they did a deal with the largest global soft drinks provider and realized that this manually based process was simply going to fail for them. It didn't work. It wasn't scalable. It couldn't go beyond being this, sort of one activity at a time spreadsheet based process. So we sat down with them. We ran a series of process workshops that looked at kind of those four core aspects of it. It looked at the process that as it currently ran and what they wanted it to do. It looked at the technology available. It looked at the people involved, and underlying it all was the data that was being created and managed for that process. Coming out of that, we realized there were many different types of product launches. And in their case, just manufacturing a product and bringing it to market was a product launch. Throughout this, they also had a completely new supply chain that they had to be able to manage. They identified three areas that they wanted to focus on. One was point of sale materials, because merchandise was a massive part of their revenue stream. One was raw materials, again, brand new supply chain that they needed to be able to manage and automate. And then the actual production of the beverages themselves. Once we went through this process, they were able to adopt a form-based system that worked from a single landing page. And from that landing page, they could then identify, are we going to do a point of sale material, raw material, or is it a completely new product that we're going to manufacture? This centralized and streamlined the entire process. They no longer had those Excel worksheets. As a result of all this work, what did they see? Well, they reduced their cycle times by between 50 and 75%. They effectively cut their time to market in half. At the same time, though, they now had visibility into that process. They knew what was happening at every stage, and if there was a slowdown or a bottleneck or an issue or a question, they could identify it immediately, again, through the system. It was fully governed. Their business rules were being followed every time. And as a result, the process was repeatable, which it hadn't been before. Everything started from scratch previously. So a couple of key takeaways I want you to think about from this. I know this has been very quick, but automation is in great demand by enterprises today to deliver on that promise of digital transformation. Remember, companies today, you want to be more agile, go faster, and improve the data integrity that you have. You also want to be able to optimize your workforce and see that tangible ROI quickly. We believe very firmly at Precisely that automation is one of the most effective ways to do this today. It is one of the best ways to see returns quickly and efficiently through your business. All right, so quickly, a little bit more about Precisely. We are the world's leader in data integrity. We've got about 12,000 customers worldwide in over 100 countries. We're in 99 of the Fortune 100, and we've got about 2,500 employees. Now, many of the largest brands in the world trust us with their data. And hopefully after you see this, you've got enough information to come and take a look at us to see how we can help you with your data. In addition to that, we've got partnerships with many of the leading technology providers in the world. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, let us know, and we will do our best to get back to you and answer them.